Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Krishna Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare, Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Hare Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Rama, Ram Hare Hare, Jaya Radha Golokananda Shri Radhe, Jaya Radha Golokananda Shri Radhe, Nittai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nittai Gaura Hari Bol, Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. हरिनाम संकीर्तन की जय, श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय।
श्री रामचंद्र भगवान की जय, जय श्री रामचंद्र भगवान की
जय जय श्री रामचंद्र हनुमान की
हरे कृष्णा हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम हरे राम 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 हरे हरे Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare Hare Oh Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare Hare Sing with me Hare Krishna Hare Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Radha Golokanand Radhe Radhe. Jaya Radha Golokanand Radhe Radhe. Jaya Radha Shyam Sundar Radhe Radhe. Jaya Radha Shyam Sundar Radhe Radhe. Jaya Sita Ram, Jaya Sita Ram. Jaya Sita Ram, Jaya Sita Ram. Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol. Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. Gaur Premanande. Shri Shri Radha Golokanand ki, Shri Ramachandra Bhagwan ki, Srila Prabhupada ki. Hare Krishna. Everyone loudly, Hare Krishna. So those who did not get a chance to offer Abhishek, the line is right behind there along the door. So you can please move that side, those who have not offered Abhishek. And remaining devotees, I request all of you to come and please be seated here as close as possible to where I am standing. Everyone as quickly as possible, please come, take your seats, settle down. And also those who have not offered Abhishek, is still going on right behind the screen there. So please don't miss the opportunity to offer Abhishek. Okay, everyone else, please come, be seated. Come quickly. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Mic stand. Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare. So devotees who are offering Abhishek, we are going to have a beautiful presentation right now. So we request all the devotees there, offer Abhishek, but very quietly, no talking, and very silently you can offer your Abhishek there. Okay. So our schedule now is we are going to have a very beautiful, amazing presentation by a very dear disciple of Srila Prabhupada. Let's warmly welcome Her Grace Urmila Devi Dasi. Hariva! Mataji is a very wonderful disciple of Srila Prabhupada, and all over ISKCON, she is known for her depth of wisdom, her intellectual knowledge on all the Vedas and Shastras. The essence of all the Vedas and Shastras? Yes? Essence? Yes, Haribo! Haribo.
Never going to believe anything else he says.
Hare Krishna. So we are very fortunate Mataji is going to do a presentation now. And immediately after the presentation, we are going to proceed downstairs and we have amazing drama and cultural performances. The drama is also something devotees have been practicing for a long time. It's going to be a beautiful Ramayana presentation and then prasadam. Two quick announcements. We want to announce a retreat that is coming up at New Goloka. Shh. Everyone no talking please, even those who are offering Abhishek. We need the attention here. So on the long weekend, July 4th, 5th and 6th, we are going to have a 3 days retreat at New Goloka with His Grace Gauranga Darshan Prabhu and His Grace Amarendra Prabhu. So this week the forms are going to go out. Please register. We are asking everyone to register for the retreat, and we'll have more information. The retreat is called Rasa Chintamani, and we are planning to have this every year. Okay. Also, another quick announcement. We announced that in New York we have buses going for the New York Rath Yatra June 13th, 14th and 15th. And we have one bus we opened yesterday which got full, but we are still taking registrations for the second bus. If you are interested, please register soon. So devotees who would like to come will have the second bus. So that needs to be done in a week or 10 days time. So anyone interested, please register as soon as possible. June 13th, 14th and 15th is New York Rath Yatra. And you'll have a bus going from here all the way to New York. So if you'd like to register, all the information has been sent out, but you can always reach out to me for more information. And as I announced earlier, if anyone would like to sponsor any aspect of this festival, we have different sponsorship opportunities with the fees 301, Artik and Abhishek for 108. Thank you so much. So please, let's get absorbed in this presentation. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, I just need to do a quick sound check. We checked it earlier, but you always want to check it again. Okay, great. By the way, I just, as all you know, we're doing work in Prabhupada's hall, and the floor is going to get another layer of sealant tomorrow morning. So we're asking if you not eat and nothing other than water, please, in the hall. So that's why we're setting up the tables outside. So if you can go in there for the presentation, but if you could take prasad outside, that would be great. Is that all right? No, I'm not going to sing. No time.
Vitarasi Diksurani Dikpati Kamaniyam Dasamukha Mauli Balingamani. The next avatar is Ramchandra. So the Ravana who has 10 heads, he challenged the Lord. And Lord Ramchandra took up his challenge and killed him.
Nima Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharne Nivasesa Sanyavadi Paskachade Satarne Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Sam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sadvadutam Parijana Sahita Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha Panchakapa Chubhyascha Kripa Sindhavyevacha Patitanam Pavanevyo Vaishnavebhi Namo Namaha. We're going to be doing a very fast run through a very long and complex story. And we are asking that as soon as I finish here, that you immediately go down to the hall. We have some fantastic entertainment starting at 6:15. All right? All right. So Valmiki saw a hunter kill some mating birds, and he got so angry that he cursed the hunter in a new meter never before heard. Surprised at why he'd gotten so angry, Lord Brahma comes and says, I want you to use this meter to write the story of Ram. Dasarath was, like all responsible leaders, very concerned with succession. Poor leaders want an organization to depend on them, and they're happy when it fails after they leave. But a good leader doesn't put themselves at the center, they put the organization at the center. And you see this very much in the history of ISKCON with Srila Prabhupada, who in 1970 established a GBC so that the mission could go on even without his physical presence. But Dasarath had no successor, and he was getting older and older. And so he called for Rishishringa to do this special yajna by which his wives could conceive. His 3 wives then gave birth to 4 children. One of them had twins, and that was Kausalya, who gave birth to Ram, right? Kaikeyi, who gave birth to Bharat, and Sumitra, who gave birth to Lakshman and Shatrughna. All of these sons were manifestations of the Lord. Advaitam, Achyutam, Anadi, Mananta Rupam. There's one God, but he appears in a multiplicity of forms. Right? Most monotheistic traditions of the world today don't even understand that God can have any form. But we say he has unlimited forms like the waves in the ocean, but he's all the same person. Even for ourselves, we have a somewhat different manifestation at work and at home, right? Yes? So Dasarath and Kausalya raised the Supreme Lord with great love and affection. There are different relationships one can have with the Lord, and one of them is thinking that I am the Lord's parent. And Dasarath and his queens, they raised these boys with so much love, so much care, making sure that the boys were trained not only in general education, but in specific education for their going on to rule. The idea of monarchy was that you had qualified children that were trained from the very beginning of life. And this way we would actually have qualified political rulers. One day, Vishwamitra Muni came to visit Dasarath, said, how is everything going with your kingdom? And Dasarath said, how is everything going on with you trying to conquer birth and death? And Vishwamitra said, yes, everything's going well with me. And Dasarath says, well, whatever you like, you can have. Be very careful about saying this to people. So Vishwamitra said, oh, well, I would like your son Ram to kill some demons at a sacrifice I'm having because I am as a Brahmin, I'm not supposed to be doing that. And Dasarath was like, no. Ram is only 16, he's not trained. And Vasistha's like, you better fulfill your promise. And don't worry, Vishwamitra himself is qualified to deal with the demons, and he can protect your son. There won't be any difficulty. Actually, this will be auspicious for your son. And Dasarath said, all right, but Lakshman has to go as well. So Vishwamitra took Ram and Lakshman, and first they came to a stone. He said, Ram, please put your feet on this stone. When Ram did so, out of the stone came Ahalya, who had been cursed to be a stone because of her infidelity. But now she surrendered unto Ram and was reunited with her husband. Vishwamitra taught Ram and Lakshman various mantras. This is also this mood of thinking of the Lord as my child or my student, and I have to teach them something, even though the Lord is the source of all wisdom. And then he said to Ram, I want you to kill this demon Tarika, who is disturbing the sacrifice, disturbing the devotees, disturbing the saintly persons. And then her children, Subahu and Marich. After killing Tarika, they saw that Subahu and Marich were throwing blood and pus and stool and urine on the sacrifice. And so Ram killed Subahu, but he didn't kill Marich. He took an arrow and he sent Marich many, many thousands of miles away. That will be important later. Then Vishwamitra told Ram and Lakshman an interesting story. He said, not far from here in Mithila, King Janaka was preparing for a sacrifice and ritualistically was plowing the ground when out came this beautiful baby girl. He then adopted the child. And when she became old enough to marry, he thought, who can marry such a divine goddess? he had noticed that this girl named Sita had with one hand lifted the bow of Shiva, which normally on a wheeled cart had to be pulled by over 300 strong men. Therefore he said, whoever can string this bow of Shiva is qualified to be equal to my daughter. He proclaimed this all over the land, and Vishwamrita took Ram and Lakshman there to contend for the hand of Sita. Ram not only strung the bow, but as he pulled back on it, it broke, upon which Sita garlanded him as her husband.
The women called to their friends, "Come, come, come see this beautiful exchange. Look at the beautiful Sita. See the handsome Ram."
So Sita had a sister, Urmila, who was going to marry Lakshman, and when Dasarath was told about the wedding, he said, so Sita, when Dasarath, two other sons, and Janak said, well, I have two nieces, and so there was a quadruple auspicious wedding. And when the Supreme Lord in these four forms and his consorts in four forms were headed back to Ayodhya, in front of them they saw Parasuram, the empowered incarnation, who had killed corrupt political leaders for 21 generations. And he said, oh, are you also a corrupt political leader? How dare you break the bow of Shiva? And Ram said, oh, I can take the bow of Vishnu. And he took the bow of Vishnu from Parasuram, at which point Parasuram said, my time on this earth is over. You are now the present incarnation. Sita and Ram lived very happily in Ayodhya, and then Dasarath realized, I had these children not to just try to enjoy family, but to provide for succession to rule the kingdom righteously. It's time to do that and myself retire. And consulting astrologers, they said, well, you know, the best day to do this is tomorrow. Now, at that point, Bharat and Shatrughna were out of town, or as you say in India, out of station, and they were visiting. When I first heard that, I'm like, you're not at the train station? And they were visiting Kaikeyi's relatives. And so Dasarath announces tomorrow is going to be the coronation of Ram. This was agreed to by all the ministers and wise people. And everybody was celebrating except for Kaikeyi's servant Manthara, who'd been with her since she was a little girl. And Manthara was like a conspiracy theorist, you know? She's like, something nefarious is going on. Why are we doing this so fast? And when Bharat's out of town, there must be something going on. You know, there's these people that see the cloud behind every silver lining, so she was one of those kinds of people. And she goes to Kaikeyi and she says, you know, this is all an attempt to make you second. You'll be a servant, your son will be a servant. And she's like, Kaikeyi's like, this is nonsense. I love my stepson Ram as much as my own son. But Manthara gradually turned her mind, and there's a whole lesson here that no matter how elevated you are, and even if you're directly associated with the Lord, be careful of bad association. And Manthara eventually convinces Kaikeyi, and she says, you know, you have some leverage. You once saved your husband's life, and he said, I'll give you 2 boons, whatever you like. But you didn't take them then. So ask for your son Bharat to be enthroned. And just so there's no coup or, you know, get Ram out of the picture for 14 years. So Kaikeyi does this, she manipulates her husband. And as a Kshatriya, to keep his word of honor, right, he just doesn't know what to do. And when Ram hears of it, he says, Kaikeyi, you're also my mother. I accept your order. And I am going to keep my father's honor, just like Krishna says to Arjuna, declare it boldly that my devotee is never vanquished. Because he says, look, if I as the Lord say something, I might change my mind. But if my devotee says something, I am going to stand by my devotee. So when Srila Prabhupada says, you just follow this process, 16 rounds, 4 regulative principles, try to serve without offense, and you'll go back to home, back to Godhead, we know that Krishna is standing behind this promise. So Ram says, okay, I will accept. Lakshman wants to fight it, but Ram says, no, we're not fighting our father. Then Lakshman says, okay, I'm coming with you. And when Sita hears this, she says, I am also coming with you. Marriage is for better or for worse. Not that I'm just going to be your queen, but I'm not going to live with you in the forest. And Ram cannot deny her. So with Dasarath mourning, they put on the garbs of ascetics, and they prepare to go to the forest. And Ram takes permission from Kausalya. As they go, all of Ayodhya starts to follow them. The citizens of Ayodhya say, what is the use of being in Ayodhya without Sita, Ram, and Lakshman? But when everyone is resting by the bank of a river at night, Ram gets up and says, let's go. And they take the chariot through the water so no one can follow them. They come to a tribal village, and Ram is particularly famous as an avatar for having devotees among, say, not so expected groups. So he has, tribals, animals, yes, as his devotees. And Guha says, why don't you stay with me? And Ram says, no, I'm in exile. I cannot stay in any kind of city. And Ram and Lakshman mat their hair, and they take a boat across the Ganga with the payment of having their foot washed by the boatmen. And there Sita prays to the Ganga for their safe return. Then they find the sages in the forest, and this is a very significant meeting on many levels, because the sages tell Ram there are evil, cannibal demons eating the sages. Please protect us. And Ram says, yes, I will protect you. Then afterwards, Sita says, was that the right thing to do? We're living in the forest. You're not really acting as a Kshatriya. That's what happened to Bharat. After Bharat became a Vanaprastha and left everything, he saw this little baby deer and he said, I'm a Kshatriya, I should protect it. No, he was a renunciate. So Sita says, you're a renunciate. And Ram says, no, I'm not a renunciate. I'm still a Grahastha. I'm still a Kshatriya. This is just to fulfill my father's promise. See, I'm still carrying my weapons. And anyway, he said, I made a promise. So there's no more discussing this after I've given my word. In the meantime, Dasarath hears that Ram, Lakshman, and Sita had entered deep within the forest and were not coming back. He recalls how when he was young, he accidentally killed a young boy, thinking it was an elephant drinking water. And the parents, as they were dying, cursed him that he would die in separation from his own son. But to die in deep thoughts of separation from the Supreme Lord is the most glorious death. Bharat and Shatrughna come back, and Bharat's like, what's going on? Kaikeyi says, well, your father's died. But the real wonderful thing is that now you can be the king. Oh, and Ram and Sita are exiled in the forest with Lakshman for 14 years. And he rejects his mother. Prabhupada gives Bharat as an example of someone who rejects his mother for a higher cause. And he says, I'm not buying into any of this. I'm going to go to the forest and bring Ram back. It doesn't work very well. Ram says, I'm sorry. I'm going to keep my father's word. And Bharat says, I'm not going to become the king. So they make a deal that Ram would still officially be the king, but he would stay in the forest and his shoes would sit on the throne, and Bharat, performing austerities, would rule as his representative. The first demon they kill is Virad, who tried to run away with Sita. And soon they attract the attention of Shurpanaka. She's the sister of Ravana. When she sees Ram, she falls in love with him or in lust with him, and she wants to carry him away. But he says, I've taken Ekpatni Vrat. I will only marry one wife. Even if my wife dies, I will not marry again. And I'm not going to associate with any other woman. But my brother Lakshman has not taken such a vow, and his wife stayed back in Ayodhya, so maybe you could get together with him. And Lakshman says, well, I'm not really acting like a prince here. I'm acting like a servant, and you're a princess. You're not going to want to be with me. She says, it's this Sita that's causing the problem. And she goes to kill Sita, at which point Lakshman cuts off her nose and ears. She runs to her relatives Kar and Dushan and tells them, I have been disgraced. kill Ram and Lakshman. So Kar and Dushan, they come with 14,000 Rakshasas to attack. Ram tells Lakshman, take Sita to a cave and protect her, and Ram single-handedly kills all 14,000 Rakshasas. Only one, Akampan, survives. Akampan goes to Ravana and tells him about the situation. Says, there's this man who killed 14,000 Rakshasas. And Shurpankhar then goes to Ravana and shows him how her nose and ears have been cut off. Said, I have been disgraced trying to capture this woman Sita to be one of your queens. A little manipulative and deceptive there. And Ravana decides, well, if I'm going to capture Sita, I'm going to have to do it by deception. So he goes to Marich and says, would you please disguise yourself as a golden deer and lure Ram and Lakshman away from the hermitage? And Marich says, not a good idea. I already have encountered Ram. He's not a human. He's the Supreme Lord. He sent me thousands of miles away, and I've been performing austerities. And Ravana says, look, you have a choice. You can be killed by me as a traitor, or you can be killed by Ram as an enemy. So much more honorable to be killed by an enemy than to be killed by your own government. And that's how Marich was thinking. But when you're killed by God, you get liberated. So it was kind of using his desire for honor for something transcendent. So Marich agrees. He knows he's going to die. And he disguises himself as this magical golden deer. And Sita sees this and says, Ram, Lakshman, look at this creature. We only have one more year left of our exile. Can you capture it? We'll bring it back to Ayodhya. And Lakshman says, this is not an ordinary deer. It's a demon in disguise. And Ram says, well, if it's a demon, I'll just simply kill it. No problem at all. And Ram goes off to get the golden deer. But as he sees the deer as a demon, he shoots an arrow. And as Marichi dies, he says, hey, Ram! Hey, Lakshman, hey, Sita, help me, help me, help me, help me. I am dying here. I, Ram, am dying. Lakshman, Sita, help me. And Sita loses it. And she says to Lakshman, aren't you going to help your brother? And Lakshman unwillingly leaves Sita unprotected. At which point Ravana disguises himself as a holy man. That's been happening since the beginning of time. In Krishna's pastimes, there are demons who disguise themselves as devotees, yes? Putana, Vyomasura, Pralambasura. Today, there are criminals who dress up as police officers, right? Best way to commit a crime. So don't be surprised. So he comes begging alms. When Sita goes to give him alms, he captures her, puts her on his chariot, but they are immediately attacked by the vulture Jatayu, friend of Dasarath. I remember seeing this scene when devotees were doing this in theater. I was sitting 2 rows behind Srila Prabhupada in New York, and where Sita says to Jatayu, Jatayu, don't. You are too old, and he is stronger than you. And when I heard that, somehow in Prabhupada's presence, I felt that I was no longer in a theater and no longer in New York, but in the middle of the forest. So Jatayu fights with Ravana. He's able to destroy Ravana's chariot, but he loses his wings and talons, and Ravana just takes Sita himself to Lanka. As Jatayu lies dying, Ram and Lakshman return, and he's able to say with his last breath, it was Ravana who carried Sita to the south, at which point Ram performs the funeral rites like for his father. Ram and Lakshman then look everywhere for Sita. They're heading toward the south, but they can't find her anywhere. Where is she gone? As they're looking, they're captured by Kadamba, this huge monster. When I used to be in the Ramayana, we had this huge Kadamba costume, and we'd go out on Harinam in our costumes, and people. So Kadamba's holding Ram and Lakshman, and Ram and Lakshman take their swords and cut off his arms, at which point he appears in a celestial form and says, if you want to get help finding your wife, go to Shabari, who's waiting for you. She can give you advice. When Shabari's guru had gone to the spiritual world, she wanted to go with him. And he said, no, you stay here, because the Supreme Lord in his forms of Ram and Lakshman will someday come Just like Prabhupada tells us, if we chant Hare Krishna, Krishna will someday come. And so every day, Shabaris picking fruits, scattering flowers on the path, day after day, year after year. And then one day, Ram and Lakshman actually come. She then tells them, where you're going to get help is from Sugriva and Hanuman. You please go to Lake Pampa, they will help you. Now give me permission to depart to your abode. So Ram and Lakshman go there. They first meet Hanuman in disguise, who takes them to meet Sugriva, also an exiled king, who had also lost his wife, also due to family manipulations. Don't be surprised if there's difficulties in your family, even in the Lord's family and in the great devotees' family. Sometimes there's weird things going on. So Ram and Sugriva make a pact of friendship. And Ram says, first I will kill Bali, restore your kingdom and your wife. He does that. And then it's the rainy season. So they had to wait. During that time, Sugriva got kind of really into being the king again, and he had to be reminded rather forcibly by Lakshman, hey, you have a promise to fulfill. At that time, Sugriva gathered his army of monkey men, probably sightings of Bigfoot and the Yeti or these kind of creatures, I don't know. But they're talking monkey men. They're called Kim Purushas, which means, are they human? And so they sent out 4 groups of these monkeys to look for Sita in the 4 directions. But because Jatayu had said the south, Hanuman was sent to the south. Hanuman's group was sent to the south, and Ram gave him his ring. He said, Sita won't know who you are. You're going to have to give her some token that you're actually my messenger. This is one of my favorite paintings. So Hanuman's group gets all the way to the shore of the ocean where they meet Jatayu's brother, Sampati, who says, I can see Sita there in Lanka, but how are we going to get there? And Jambavan reminds Hanuman, you can jump. We ever have people like that in our lives who remind us, who bring out some talents, some abilities that we didn't even know that we had, and said, actually, you can do this. Like, really? I can? Hanuman then jumps over the ocean, meets many obstacles and some friends, and comes to Lanka, is looking for Sita, and finally finds her in the Ashok Grove. There, Hanuman sees Sita threatened by the Rakshasis and by Ravana, who tells her, he says, I'm cursed, I cannot ravage a woman. You have 2 more months to surrender to me, after which time I will eat you. Really nice way to get someone to fall in love with you, you know. Love me or I will have you for breakfast. So Hanuman goes in a tree and he's singing songs about Ram to capture Sita's attention. Then he shows her Ram's ring. And he says, I can bring you. And she says, no, I have to be saved by my Lord. Then Hanuman's thinking, now this is also important. Hanuman's thinking, I have an order to find Sita. That's my order. But you know, it'd be good to do some reconnaissance. Might be good to find out all about Lanka. Now, how am I going to do that unobtrusively and also send a clear message to the Rakshasas? So he starts knocking down the Ashok Grove and taking the fruits. Actually kills one of Ravana's sons in the process. And he's brought them to Ravana's court, where Ravana says he should be killed. And Bibhishan says, no, you cannot kill a messenger. So Ravana says, well, we can mutilate him, so let's set fire to his tail. Then Hanuman jumps back across the ocean and takes the monkeys all the way back to Kishkinda, the kingdom of Sugriva. Then Ram, Lakshman, and all the monkeys go to the shore of the ocean. But what are they going to do? They can't jump like Hanuman. So Ram, in his human-like pastimes, he does austerities to ask the ocean to give way, but the ocean doesn't. So Ram actually sends this fire into the ocean, and finally the god of the ocean comes and says, okay. Why don't you put some rocks and we'll let them float? As they're starting to do this, Ravana's brother Babishan comes to surrender to Ram. And everyone, including Lakshman, says, you can't trust him. He's the brother of the enemy. And Lakshman says, if he's going to be disloyal to his brother, and at a time of crisis, how can you trust him? And Hanuman says, but he spoke up for me in the assembly. And Ram says, anyone who surrenders to me, even if it's Ravana himself, will get my shelter. Then he crowns Babishan as the future king of Lanka, and they build a bridge across the ocean. When they get there to Lanka, then begins a great battle. Many of Ravana's sons are killed one after another, his brothers one after another, but then Ram and Lakshman are attacked with a snake whip, and it looks like all will be lost until Garuda saves them. Ravana then, being very desperate, decides to wake up his brother Kumbhakarna, the great giant who would sleep for 6 months at a time. It wasn't very easy to wake him up. But once they woke him up, he started smashing monkeys and eating them by the palmful until Ram cut off his arms and head and threw him in the water. Then Lakshman was attacked by a weapon that put him unconscious. And the doctor said, the only place we're going to get an herb is from a mountain in the Himalayas. And Hanuman went there and he says, I don't know what's there. Has ever happened to you? Someone sends you to get something, you know? Like sometimes I do shopping for some of my family and, can you get me this? And I'm looking, it's like, which is the right one, Imagine if I brought the whole food lion home. That's what Hanuman does. He just brings home the whole mountain, brings back the whole mountain. And then Prabhupada actually talked about how because he was a monkey, so he wasn't that smart, but he was very strong. So whatever our talents are, so he brings this whole mountain, and Lakshman is revived. Of course, then Babishan tells them how Indrajit's doing this yagya to become invincible, and Lakshman goes and kills him. When Indrajit dies, that's it for Ravana. Now you might think that Ravana would say, maybe I should surrender. If all of our plans crumble to dust, if we're opposing the Lord, maybe I should surrender. But he says, no, I'm going to fight harder. So he goes out to fight with Ram. And because Ravana has a chariot, Indra sends his own chariot for Ramachandra. And Ravana, of course, could manifest 10 heads and all kinds of mystic powers. And Ram's cutting off the heads and they're growing back again. And finally, Ram shoots an arrow into Ravana's heart. Lord Ramachandra ki! Babishan then laments the death of his brother. Why didn't you surrender to Ram? And Ravana's wife, who's one of the most chaste women in the Shastras, she said, you have made your